The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected. In the opening prayer for Mass today, we heard that we are asking God to help us to share in the suffering of Christ. And the life of St. Pius Pietrelcina, Padre Pio, certainly shows that in his life. He grew up on a farm, a little village, and his duties for the animals prevented him from going to school on a regular basis, so he had a deficit in his education. At age 6, he was in need of doctor's care because of a digestive problem. At age 10, he contracted typhoid fever. He wanted to enter the Capuchins, the order that follows the way of St. Francis, but he had to be tutored first to catch up, to at least have elemental knowledge of reading and writing. And finally, he entered the Capuchins, but he experienced poor health even in the monastery. At age 23, he was ordained a priest, but he had to stay home for the next 5 years because of his poor health. So he's suffering for all these years. At age 28, he was drafted into the Italian army during World War I, but discharged again because of his poor health. Well, finally, at his monastery, he began to celebrate Mass and hear confessions. He would have the Mass at 5 o'clock in the morning and then hear confessions until noon. At noontime, he would take a rest, but then go back and hear more confessions, and so he could rack up about 10 hours a day with hearing confessions. And there were so many people coming, they had to be given numbers. Just like a giant eagle at the deli counter, you get a number. Well, that way everyone had their chance. Padre Pio embraced his suffering as his personal share in the suffering of Christ. And so when we suffer, we can unite ourselves to the cross of Jesus. We can offer our sufferings to be a redemptive participation in the cross of Jesus. Hundreds of people came to him for healing, and there are recorded miracles. But he knew that many or most would not find healing from their physical suffering. And so he led the way to build a hospital, and it is called at St. Giovanni Rotondo, the House for the Relief of Suffering, a 350-bed hospital. Thought unimaginable at the time. Donations came in from all around the world to build it. Besides suffering in his own body, he suffered emotionally because along the way he was rejected by his superiors. And that re-echoes the gospel again. The Son of Man must suffer greatly and be rejected. So for a time, the Vatican gave orders that he not preach or celebrate Mass publicly or hear confessions, because they heard all the stories of the many, many people coming to visit him, and they were wondering about his stigmata and the report of miracles. His superiors, too, kept him in isolation away from people for a while. But eventually, he was again permitted to do his ministry. And many people come back from his confessional knowing a conversion that will last a lifetime. He was canonized by Pope John Paul II and is greatly revered today. So we look at Padre Pio and we see a man who suffered in different ways, but he united these sufferings to the one sacrifice of Jesus. And that's what we do when we are sick, when we are hurting, when we have hardly any words to say in prayer, we offer our suffering as a prayer. And we follow that example of Padre Pio, who embraced his suffering as a share in the sacrifice and the suffering of Christ.